Does Beckett Sennecke sneak into the top 10 of this year's draft? I'll share my thoughts on that, and we'll dive into part one of my Blackhawks Summer 2024 top prospects ranking.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Do me a quick favor, if you're watching right now on YouTube, hit that like button for me. Comment down below as well as to your thoughts on Beckett Sennecke and whether you think he jumps into the top 10 of this year's draft. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well. You're especially going to want to do that because on today's show, I'm going to be getting into part one of my updated Blackhawks prospect rankings, and that's going to be a 3 or 4 part series that I'm going to be doing here over the next couple of weeks. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on any of those episodes, as well as all the great Blackhawks coverage that I'm going to be doing leading up to this year's NHL Draft, which is now less than 3 weeks away. And last but certainly not least, I got to let you all know today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. If you're a new customer, go and sign up today by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Beefy episode on tap here today. I'm actually going to be starting things off with my latest 2024 NHL Draft Profile, as I alluded to. We're down to 17 days from day one of this year's draft, and I still have a handful of prospects that I need to get into. And part two is actually going to be when I'm getting into part one of my summer 2024 Blackhawks prospect rankings. I know there's probably a handful of you out there that clicked on this episode or are watching this or listening to this specifically to hear about that. If you want to jump through Beckett Sennecke's draft profile, you can go and jump to segment 2. Everything is time coded in the description, so you can easily do that. But I highly recommend you stick around to hear about Beckett Sennecke because he's a very intriguing prospect and one of the biggest risers in terms of his draft stock over the last couple of months because of the performance he put on late in the season in the OHL. But Beckett Sennecke is a 6'3", 180-pound winger who's kind of got that power forward mold and style about him. Turned 18 back in January, so kind of middle of the pack in terms of age in this year's draft class, but is coming off a year in which he put up 68 points, 27 goals, and 41 assists in 63 OHL games for the Oshawa Generals. But as I referenced, did a lot of his best work later on in the season and carried that over into the OHL playoffs for Oshawa as well, really leading the pack for them along with Callum Ritchie, I believe, for the Colorado Avalanche. Tallied 22 points in 16 postseason games, 10 goals and 12 assists. And we saw that development pretty nicely from his first year in the OHL, where he tallied 50 points in 61 games the year prior. Maybe the playmaking didn't take a leap as big as some may have hoped, but all in all, his skating abilities, he made a lot of progress in a lot of different areas. We saw the uptick in goal scoring as well. And all in all, he's a very well-rounded player, and there is a lot to like about his game. You'll hear more about that in just a second when I dive into his strengths and weaknesses. But as I referenced, his stock is rising, and there are some folks who think that Beckett Sennecke could even creep into the top 10 of this year's draft, and where he's going to go in the first round of this year's draft, again, just kind of depends on who you're asking at this point in time, as he was ranked as high as number 9 here by Elite Prospects, but ranked 19th by Bob McKenzie, 12th by Craig Button, 27th by Tony Ferrari is the lowest rating among the group of scouts and draft analysts that I like to look at and feel they do some of the best work in the business. Also ranked 14th by McKean's Hockey, 21st by Chris Peters, 14th by Daily Faceoff, 14th by Sportsnet, and 20th by Dobber Prospect. So a little bit all over the place. Most of the pack, though, think that Sennecke is going somewhere between 14 and 20, 14 and 21. Tony Ferrari, of course, thinks he's going to be one of the final few picks in the first round, whereas elite prospects believe he has the capability to jump inside the top 10. When diving into Beckett Sennecke's strengths and weaknesses, though, the first thing that really stands out is just his good combination of size and skill. And that's always intriguing to NHL clubs. I think it's especially intriguing to the Chicago Blackhawks, considering I really believe they could use a player of that makeup in their forward prospect pool at this point in time. And as I alluded to, he has that true power forward mold, even though he is a little bit undersized still at this point in time. But I also think part of that is because he grew 5 inches reportedly over the last year and a half. When he entered the OHL, he was like a 5'10", 16, 17-year-old, but he's grown to 6'3". So I think he's a little bit gangly still right now. He's going to have to put on some weight, but there is a lot of potential for his body to turn into that true power forward type of guy at the NHL level. And also based on the skills that he has as well, a very talented player. It's very clear. And he's also a really good skater for his size, which is super intriguing as well. Maybe he doesn't have that blow past you top end speed. I think he's a little lacking there, but he has developed his skating rather nicely over the last year when I've read multiple reports from different scouts and whatnot saying that's something he really worked on over the past year and made some nice developments in that category. So hopefully he'll only be able to continue along that track. There is still room for him to grow there, but all in all, for a player of his size, he skates very well. He's got good edge work. He's got good crossovers. The technique is pretty good altogether. So there is reason to believe that he has some good room to grow in the skating ability, which is encouraging for his size as well. And then the offensive attributes, like it's really well rounded here. Honestly, I think he's probably going to be more of a playmaker than a goal scorer at the next level, but he can give you a little bit of everything there. I think he reads plays and reads defenders really well, and he's also very patient. He doesn't force a lot of passes. He does force some things in one-on-one sometimes, and I'll get to his puck handling here in a second. But the passing, he reads defenders and is very, very patient out there, and he buys time for himself using both his body and his skating ability to create some space and some time for himself to let the play develop, find an open teammate, draws defenders to him very well to set up teammates on odd man rushes and plays in front of the net as well. He's got a good passing ability, and the shot is really solid as well, definitely above average. The curl and drag, isn't among the best in this year's class, but he's got some good power. He's got some good accuracy. I think he's going to be a 15, 20, 25 goal scorer at the next level. I don't think that's going to be a concern. And that's kind of the thing about all of his attributes. Like there's not a whole lot of concerns there. It's just kind of how high is the upside. But you love to see that he also has some really good puck handling abilities. And that's something that's really developed better late in the season as well. He scored some razzle-dazzle goals in the OHL. Some of the best goals actually that I've seen out of all of these top prospects. He's capable of scoring a highlight reel goal. I don't know if he's going to be doing that at the next level per se, but I like to see that he's confident in his puck handling abilities. I don't know, again, if he's going to be the dominant puck carrier on a line at the next level, but he's already shown us that he's more than capable of doing that and is making improvements in his skating ability to kind of round things out. So a lot to like about Beckett Sennecke's game. As far as the weaknesses, the first thing that really comes to mind is just what is the upside there? Is he going to be a, 60 to 70 point guy at the next level, or is he just kind of going to be a 40 to 50 point guy? It's a little bit hard to tell at this point in time, especially when, it was kind of a late postseason run. Yeah, you love to see him play his best at the most meaningful time of the year, but he still was only barely over a point per game in total for the season. Yeah, you'll take that, but I still think there's a little bit of a capped upside and there's just some risk. And that's why ultimately I don't know if he's going to go in the top 10 of this year's draft. He also definitely needs to get stronger, needs to hit that like 200-pound threshold, I think, to really hit his stride and get to that next level that he could be capable of doing in the NHL. He just needs to fill out his frame. And again, I think part of that is just taking some time in, this new kind of body type that he has. And these are things you say a lot about 17 or 18-year-old kid. So not the biggest concern in the world, but I would like to see him also work on his consistency on the defensive side of things. A little bit lackluster in coverage, a little bit lackluster in terms of his engagement and his compete. That's something that also got a little bit better this year, but consistently just wasn't there on a night in, night out, shift to shift basis. And I really think because of his size, his skating, I think he could be a good back checker, and I think he could be a good defender at the next level, but he's got to want to be that. And we really haven't seen that so far. But again, only 18 years old in the OHL, trying to be the man offensively for his team. I would like to see him round out his game a little bit more. But as far as the projection goes here for Beckett Sennecke, I don't think he winds up going in the top 10 like some people think, but I do believe he goes right after it because there's just a lot to love about his game, and he feels like a very safe pick. I really feel confident in saying that he's going to be a good middle six winger who can score 20 goals and put up 20 to 25 assists at the same point in time. And there is a belief that if he continues to develop, there's a lot of runway and there's a very high ceiling there. And that's why some people do believe that he can creep into the top 10, especially based on what he did late in the season for Oshawa. I'm still not sold that he's going to be a top line guy, but I feel really confident that he's going to be an NHLer, especially if he rounds out his frame and continues to get better on the feet. Then there is the potential for him to be a real problem. So I probably expect Beckett Sennecke to go somewhere between number 11 and number 14. I do have him ranked ahead of both Trevor Connolly and Konsta Helenius, just to put that in perspective for anyone out there. And as far as a long-term fit potentially with the Chicago Blackhawks, oh man, this is a player I would love to see the Blackhawks add to their prospect pool up front. They need a player with both size and skill, and that's why I talked about Caden Lindstrom being so intriguing. And sounds like the Blackhawks were really giving him some thought until this year's scouting combine over the weekend, where now it feels like they're down to only Artem Levshinov and Ivan Demidov. But yeah, a player of this makeup, of this size and skill, yeah, I'd love to add Beckett Sennecke to the Blackhawks prospect pool. The problem is I don't see any way in hell he's going to make it to number 18. He's just too talented. His stock is rising too high. But I'll tell you what, if he falls to number 14, KD, go and make some calls to see what that asking price could be, because Beckett Sennecke feels like he could be a really solid player if he hits his middle floor, and there's a lot of runway there. So he's an intriguing prospect for sure. I love size. I love skill. I know a lot of NHL front offices feel the same way. So very curious to see where Beckett Sennecke winds up going in this year's draft. He won't be falling to the Blackhawks at number 18, though. I firmly believe that. But that's going to take care of Beckett Sennecke's 2024 NHL Draft Profile. Don't go anywhere, Blackhawks fans, because coming up in just a moment, it's time to get into part one of my updated Blackhawks top prospect rankings. But first, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in both the NHL and the NBA. We've reached the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup. The Florida Panthers, the runaway freight train, have a 2-0 lead over the Edmonton Oilers, and the Boston Celtics in the same spot in the NBA Final, up 2-0 over the Dallas Mavericks. And you got to also love that baseball is back in full swing at the same time, and FanDuel is your perfect place to go and bet on every single game. And if you're a new customer, make sure to go and check out FanDuel.com/lockedon. That way you can get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed when you sign up. Yes, you heard me right. $150 guaranteed, whether your first bet is a win or a loss. And you can use these bonuses to bet on everything from slam dunks en route to the NBA championship, or slap shots all the way to the Stanley Cup, and even home runs across all the great ballparks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Go and make your first bet an automatic win by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. And if you're a new customer, you'll get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, segment 2. It's time for one of my favorite things that I do a couple of times every year, once before the start of the season, once at the midway point of the year, and then once, of course, during the summer as well. It's my Blackhawks top prospects list. And in the past, little surprise here for you, Hawks fans. In the past, I've only done a top 10. I have done honorable mentions, but given that the Blackhawks prospect pool is, even though Connor Bedard, spoiler alert here, Connor Bedard, Kevin Korchinski, they have now graduated from the prospect stage as they're clearly full-time NHLers. Well, Korchinski, I guess, we'll see what happens with him next year, but was a full-time NHLer this year. I think it's only fair to have them past that prospect stage. But it's still a very deep prospect pool with the numerous picks that the Blackhawks have accumulated over the last couple of years since general manager Kyle Davidson took over. So I figured I'd turn this into a Blackhawks summer 2024 top 20 prospect rankings. Make sure to go and hit that like button for me since I up this to top 20 for all of you out there. And as a reminder, this is going to be a 3 or 4 part series. I'm only going to get into numbers 20 through 16 on today's episode. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on parts 2, 3, and 4 of the series later on this week and early on next week. And also, what I want to do before I get into this ranking is just a quick reminder of what my rankings were the last time I did this at the midway point of the 2023-2024 regular season, which feels like ages ago. And at that point in time, Connor Bedard and Kevin Korchinski were still on this list. So just as a reminder where I had everyone ranked at the last time I did this, just so we could see some big risers, some big time fallers. It kind of puts everything into perspective a little bit. And honestly, what's really cool is since I've been doing this podcast, it's been, 3 years now. I've kept all my prospects list on my phone. So, my first one was like Lucas Reichel at number 1 before Kyle Davidson was even here and the prospect pool was as thin as possible. It's been cool to see this list and this prospect pool really, really grow and deepen over these last couple of years and has to have you excited about the future of the Chicago Blackhawks. And the coolest part about it, Blackhawks fans, is the picks are going to keep coming over the next couple of years, and the Blackhawks are going to get a really good player added into that pool with the number 2 overall pick in this year's draft. But enough of the rambling. As a reminder of what the rankings looked like, the last time I did this, my top 10 was Connor Bedard at number 1, Kevin Korchinski at number 2, Frank Nazar at number 3, Oliver Moore at number 4, Ethan Del Mastro at number 5, Drew Comesso at number 6, Ryan Green at number 7, Colton Dock at number 8, Adam Guyan at number 9, and then Nolan Allen to round things out at number 10. I also had as honorable mention Sam Rinzel 11, Wyatt Kaiser 12, Roman Kanserov 13, Gavin Hayes 14, and Nick Lardis 15. And again, Connor Bedard, Kevin Korchinski have officially graduated from the prospect stage, so they won't be on my rankings. And Lucas Reichel, Alex Vlasic, Arvid Soderblom, Cole Gutman, Isaac Phillips, they all graduated at the midway point of last season. So if you don't hear any of those guys on this list, it's because they've already graduated from the prospect stage. But here we go, kicking things off at number 20. It's none other than my boy, Sweet Louis Crevier, 6'8", 230-pound right-handed defenseman who just turned 23 last month in early May. And how about his development these last couple of years, Blackhawks fans, after being a 7th-round selection in 2020, the 188th overall pick after tallying 36 points in 62 games with the Quebec Remparts of the QMJHL in the 2021-2022 season. He went on and turned pro, signed his contract with the Chicago Blackhawks, and has had a pretty decent first 2 years of pro hockey, mostly spent with the Rockford IceHogs. But this past year, we did get to see him break through the wall and make his NHL debut, in part because the Blackhawks were so banged up all year long. Nikita Zaitsev was injured. They didn't want to be playing Jared Tenorti all that much. So old Sweet Lou had to come up, especially as one of the only right-handed defensemen at the pro level in the system right now. And I thought he handled his own decently, got off to a really nice start and then faded those last handful of games before being reassigned back down to the Rockford Ice Hogs. But in total with Rockford, in 41 games, he tallied 11 points, 3 goals, and 8 assists. And in 24 games with the Blackhawks last year, he tallied 3 assists as well. The offense, though, is never going to be Sweet Lou's bread and butter. He's always going to be more of a defensive, stay-at-home defenseman to try and utilize that long reach, that big body of his, be physical in front of the net, be tough to play along the boards, be good in the gritty areas, be a penalty killer. That's always going to be his bread and butter. But what I give him credit for is how well he moves for a player of his size. And I think that's what gives him a chance to potentially be an NHLer. I think his ceiling is probably a fringe extra defenseman. But, from what we saw out of him with the Blackhawks and his first taste of NHL hockey, he showed some signs. I don't think he has the brightest future or the biggest ceiling in the world, but there is a chance that he could be an NHLer or an extra defenseman. And as the 20th guy in the prospect pool, I think that's pretty darn notable. So good on Sweet Lou for developing well over these last couple of years after, again, being the 188th overall pick in the 2020 NHL draft. Up next, though, at number 19 is Jackson Stauber, 6'3", 175-pound goaltender who is not on my rankings whatsoever when I last did this in the midseason. But boy, did he have a good finish to the year with the Rockford Ice Hogs, and really was one of the driving forces that led them to getting home ice, to surpassing the play-in series in the first round of the Calder Cup playoffs and getting their best finish in the Central Division standings in the last couple of years. It was because Staubs was money. 25, turned 25 back in early April, and we saw that upside based on what he had did in his last 2 years of college with Providence before the Blackhawks went and signed him as an undrafted free agent. He posted a sub 2.25 goals against average in each of his last 2 seasons there, but didn't really get off to a great start to his pro career with the Ice Hogs in particular. What's actually funny is when he got called up to the Blackhawks 2 seasons ago, he went on like a good 6 or 7 game stretch, but never really showed that potential down in Rockford until later on this year and put up some really solid numbers altogether. 18-8-3 record with a 285 goals against, 902 save percentage, and 2 shutouts and 31 appearances this year. Going to be a restricted free agent, but I think he did enough for the Blackhawks to bring him back. I still have him behind both Adam Guyan and Drew Comesso in this prospect rankings, but I think there's a chance that he could be an NHLer, and he showed enough this year down in Rockford to get an extension here with Chicago in my mind. Up next at number 18, Aiden Thompson, 5'11", 180-pound center who turned 22 back in February, was a third-round pick for the Blackhawks, 90th overall in the 2022 NHL draft, and got drafted in the third round after tearing up the USHL with the Lincoln Stars. Got to draw into that memory there. But 82 points, 24 goals, and 58 assists in 57 games out of Aiden Thompson with Lincoln in the 2021-2022 campaign, and then went on to join the Denver Pioneers, one of the best programs in all of college hockey. And bam, immediately as a third-line center, was a point-per-game player for Denver last year. I was really hoping that he was going to take that next step as a sophomore, take on a bigger and more meaningful role for this team. That kind of didn't end up happening for Aiden Thompson, kind of utilized in the same role as the third-line center. And even though, he was a big part of the Pioneers winning the national championship offensively, the production dipped a little bit compared to his first year with Denver, where he only had 11 goals and 19 assists for 30 points in 44 games. So a little bit disappointing. He actually wasn't on my rankings whatsoever last year, but creeps into the top 20 as I extended the rankings, and a couple of guys have graduated now. But he was someone who was in might have been number 10 or number 11 a couple of years ago, because right after the Blackhawks drafted him, the quick twitch reads out there that I saw, he was much more mature than everyone who was at Blackhawks development camp. And part of that might have, clearly been him being a little bit older as he was drafted as an overager. But I really thought, kind of the way he was able to read out there and his skating and his offensive abilities, I thought, there was potential for him to be an NHL player. I don't know if I quite feel as strongly about that right now with the production dip this past season for Denver, but I believe he is going back to the Pioneers for his junior campaign. Hopefully he'll take on a more meaningful role and we can see him get back to being up over a point per game player once again this upcoming season. Next up at number 17, Samuel Savoie. 5'10", 190-pound winger. If you don't know about him and you're a Blackhawks fan, you're probably living under a rock. If this guy makes it to the pro level or the NHL level, Blackhawks fans are absolutely going to love him. Plays a rugged game with a smile on his face, loves to get under his opponent's skin, and does it as an undersized player, 5'10", 190 pounds, but that's kind of his shtick. That's kind of what he does, and I'm absolutely here for it. A little bit of a tough past year for Samuel Savoie, though, as we didn't get to see him kind of round out his development as we had hoped, as he suffered a broken femur in a preseason game with the Blackhawks, a gnarly looking injury. Fortunately, he was able to fully recover and got traded from the Gatineau Olympiques to the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies of the QMJHL and got to play in 21 games for them at the end of the year, tallying 10 goals and 12 assists for 22 points, and had just previously in the season prior with Gatineau been really close to a point per game guy with 59 points in 60 games there, really developing his offensive game nicely. I don't think that's ever going to be his forte at the next level, but showing some better traits in the skill game than I ever thought capable of when they first drafted him. But he has that type of game that, is different than a lot of prospects already in the pool. And I think that's what gives him a chance. And he's effective at his job. Really would like to see Samuel Savoie get healthy. We'll see if he's going to be turning pro and joining Rockford this next year, or if he's going to be going back to the QMJHL for another year of development. And last but certainly not least, to round out part one here, coming in at number 16 is Ilya Safonov, kind of a wild card in the Blackhawks prospect pool, but there's a lot to like about this kid's game at a young age. First off, he's a 6'4", 205-pound center. He's got some really good size, turned 23 actually just a few days ago here, but was a 6th-round pick, 172nd overall for the Blackhawks in 2021, and has put up some rather respectable numbers at a young age over in the KHL, which probably isn't the second best league anymore. It's kind of considered to be the SHL now, but still one of the better professional men's hockey leagues out there outside of the NHL. The production took a little bit of a dip this year compared to what it did during the 2023 campaign, where as a 21-year-old, he had 37 points, 19 goals, and 18 assists in 64 games and was actually named the captain of the team as a 21-year-old late in the year playing pro hockey, which I think is really notable. The offense, we didn't see it at the same level this past year in the K with only 20 points, 13 goals, and 7 assists in 67 games. So still got a chunk of action with Akbars as an alternate captain. So got a big opportunity, but I still think there's a lot to like about his game. He's got some good size. The video from what I've seen, he's got a power forward makeup with goal scoring abilities. I think that's intriguing in the Blackhawks prospect pool. The question is, will he ever come to North America? That's kind of the gamble, especially with some of these older prospects that are taken a couple of years ago. We know Ivan Demidov has made it pretty clear he's going to come over to North America. So has his agent. Blackhawks have had some tough luck with Russians, though. So knock on wood, if they do take Demidov, they won't have the same. I know that's not a concern. I hope Ilya Safonov does come over because there's a lot to like there. He's rugged. He's got some size to him, willing to play defensively, leadership role as well. If he comes over, I think there's a chance that he plays meaningful middle 6, bottom 6 minutes probably for the Chicago Blackhawks one day down the road. But that's going to wrap up part one of my Blackhawks Summer 2024 Top 20 prospect ranking. Make sure to go and smash that like button for me and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on part 2 when that drops later on in the week. Coming up in just a minute here, Blackhawks fans. Before I wrap things up, though, I still have to get into General Manager Kyle Davidson, shutting down a potential reunion with Patrick Kane. But first, I need to talk to you all about Policygenius. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. And Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace and makes choosing the right policy for your family both quick and easy. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. And some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. And Policygenius is also the country's leading online insurance marketplace that helps you save time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting right here today. Go and talk to a team of award-winning agents who will help walk you through the entire process step by step along your side, comparing quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to get you the best and lowest price. Go and check life insurance off of your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head on over to policygenius.com, or you can simply go and click the link down in the description to get your free life insurance quotes today and see how much that you could be saving. Again, that's policygenius.com. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just a reminder again, hit that like button for me, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all very much. And also make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, another noteworthy quote that I had to be sure to get into on the show from general manager Kyle Davidson over the weekend from the NHL Scouting Combine had to do with future Hall of Famer and Blackhawks legend Patrick Kane. And as I talked about on the show pretty recently here a couple of weeks ago, there have been a lot of Blackhawks fans talking about the team possibly reuniting here with Kane, as the 35-year-old is set to hit the free agent market once again this summer. And of course, Patrick Kane had a very successful season return with the Detroit Red Wings after undergoing that very serious hip procedure. There were, very fair concerns over whether he was going to play at a high level again. Everyone who had previously undergone that surgery, never kind of looked the same. Nicholas Backstrom, probably the most notable one. But Patrick Kane kind of shut that down, nearly being a point per game player in 50 games with the Detroit Red Wings this season. Came so close to help leading them back into the Stanley Cup playoffs, but they just fell a little bit short. But looked healthier than ever the way that he was skating out there. Patrick Kane showing that he still has a lot of miles left on the tires, a lot of runway left, and that's caused a lot of Blackhawks fans to rightfully wonder, hey, Blackhawks could use some help offensively, could use another veteran leader. Wouldn't hurt to bring Patrick Kane back, right? And I understand it. And listen, I would never be mad about a Patrick Kane reunion. I am biasly the biggest Patrick Kane fan That's the reason I fell in love with hockey. It's still, you guys can't tell, but I'll open up these text messages. It's still my background on my phone. It's Patrick Kane. It's been my background since 2014. He's the man. No one loves him more than me. This never made sense, though. A reunion never made sense. And Kyle Davidson, despite so many fans wanting to see it happen here this summer, kind of shut the door for good on that, at least for right here, right now, regarding Patrick Kane coming back here. As he said, quote, I think we're really happy to see that, in terms of Patrick Kane's success. I think we're really happy to see that after having his hip procedure last offseason. That was great to see. I think we made some really tough decisions on some longstanding players, a la Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. I don't foresee us going back on that. It's just as clear as that. That chapter has closed, Blackhawks fans, and I know it's sad, and I know it would be awesome to see Kaner back rocking the Indian head at the UC. I'd love it. I'd be in attendance with a big old smile on my face. The timing just, it doesn't make sense, and I understand Kyle Davidson wanting to close that chapter and establish the new era of the Chicago Blackhawks. And with Patrick Kane here, that would always be tough to do. Everyone would always be thinking and reminiscing about the glory days. And one problem with Patrick Kane in the latter stages of his career here in Chicago, all the young guys would always defer to him on the ice. They were giving him the puck, but they need to develop to be the man. And I just don't know if they could do that with Patrick Kane here. And also, yeah, sure, I believe Patrick Kane would love to end his career with the Chicago Blackhawks, break a lot of franchise records. But I also think he wants to win, and the Blackhawks just aren't at that stage yet. It's kind of similar to the Jake Gensel thing, in my opinion, at least. They're just a year probably or two away from making those types of moves. And hearing Kyle Davidson say, I don't foresee us going back on that. I kind of feel the same way about Jake Gensel as well. I don't foresee the Blackhawks going back on dishing out a big contract this year, especially to a guy that's going to turn 30 before the puck drops this upcoming season. So it just never really made sense. I think Patrick Kane wants to win, and the Blackhawks just aren't ready to do that right here, right now, and his clock is ticking. I'm sure he wants to go somewhere to win. I just don't see that being the Blackhawks. Chicago closed the door from Kyle Davidson's side. There's a lot of intrigue for Patrick Kane. I don't think he'd personally wind up here because the Blackhawks just aren't ready to contend right here, right now, maybe a couple years down the road. And I think the same thing about the Blackhawks signing a big ticket free agent a couple years down the road. Something like this is going to happen. The timing just isn't right for right here, right now. It's kind of something I've been preaching for a while now, Blackhawks fans. I hate to say it, but we're not going to see Patrick Kane in a Blackhawks sweater for at least the next couple of seasons. Probably ever again, though, if I'm being quite honest. All right, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already, and also go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Even if you're someone who regularly watches on YouTube, go and do me a huge favor. Just make sure you're following the podcast. It won't cost you anything, but it really does help me out tremendously, and it really does go a long way. So thank you very much all for doing that. And also make sure to go and follow my personal account at Jack Bushman 2 on X. Check out at Talkin' Hockey as well for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.